On the podcast with us today is Nick Simpson. And Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, Nick, I'm really excited to kind of have you on because you were referred over to me by a good friend of ours, mutual friend, Ellie Perlman, and she had mentioned that it'd be good for you to get you onto the podcast and discuss this project that you're working on right now. It's called the Ross, which is 86 units, has 300 beds. It's a student housing project, high rise. I know there's some unique things about this project, and you've been working on it for quite some time right now, out of Salisbury, Maryland. And we're going to be talking about this project that you've been working on for a couple of years now. It's going to be breaking ground towards the end of this year. But before we dive into that property right now, I'd like for you to kind of give us a little bit of a background about yourself and kind of where you are right now as far as the multifamily side of things.
Sure. Yeah, I got into real estate about 8 years ago. I was eager to get going in the real estate space, and I ended up buying one residential property. This is after I had picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, like many other people in the industry have. I think I read it in a day, and it set that inner fire to get some real estate going. And I picked up this $30,000, I think it was $35,000 house that was a foreclosure. It was in awful shape. Did a lot of sweat equity, put about $30,000 into it. It was probably all in $70,000 or something, and ended up renting it out to college students. And one became two, and two became three, and it just grew from there. And eventually started getting into multifamily buildings because of the economies of scale that were associated with it, and definitely have done that organic growth, and made some mistakes along the way, but had a lot of fun doing it, and definitely like the team that we've built around us, we can execute a lot faster now. And we see the power of larger multifamily deals, and providing a really good product to people, and having best in class assets in markets so that we remain competitive even in the downturns.
Well, let's dive into this property right now called, I guess it's not even a property yet. It's really just a piece of land right now. But
yeah, that's right.
This project, we'll call it, called the Ross. So first, kind of take us back to the very beginning before we kind of any of this really kind of started to transpire. How did you first kind of had the vision for this kind of a property? And then what are some of the steps that you took to kind of get to where it is today?
Sure. Well, I wanted to do a couple different things. Downtown Salisbury, like many main streets across the U.S., is coming back very strongly. It's really seeing a large resurgence. So I wanted to put a property in downtown that would really turn heads and bring people in. It would also put a lot of beds in downtown, and with more residential units is definitely what's needed to keep the growth going. So I was definitely goal oriented with that, but I wanted to make sure that the investment worked, and that was where I decided to shift and focus on student housing, because that's what's really a safe and strong investment in the area. So I started looking in the downtown area, found a building that was adjacent to the parking garage, and that's critical. We needed to have parking for every single student. So we now have the rights to stick a walking bridge directly into the parking garage so that we have access for everybody. And that's what started it off. One property became two, and then three. We consolidated all three into one lot, and we got the zoning rights to build the tallest building in the area and increase the density. We've demoed the existing buildings and completed all of our architectural drawings, and it really takes a long time to put all that together, but we started out small and just incrementally made sure that we got all of the approvals in place, and now we're ready to stick a shovel in the ground.
So talk to us a little bit about why you feel like student housing is a great thing for Salisbury, because say it's somebody like me who has no clue. I've never been to Salisbury. I don't know what's in Salisbury. What makes student housing so, such a good idea right now? Because,
Sure.
Obviously right now we could talk about COVID, but even just before COVID being, this was a project you've been working on for a couple of years. So what are some of the other drivers that would cause the student housing to be a very good choice for this?
Yeah, there's a couple things that we like about student housing, and as long as you're picking the right school, and a couple of those things to think about are what does the school cost? What's the enrollment look like during recessions? Is it state owned? Is there real money behind it? What's the endowment look like? And when you check all of those boxes, for instance, like Salisbury University a part of this University of Maryland state system. So there's definitely funding behind it. They've grown recently. They have a stated goal to continue to grow the university from 8,700 students to 10,000, and they performed during the last recession. And those are things that are at the high level. Just does it pass that sniff test? And then take it one step further. Where are the students living? Are they commuting? Is it a commuter college, or are they actually living at the university? Is it mainly on campus or off campus housing? And where are they going for their enjoyment? Is it places like downtown, or is there other areas for them to go to, restaurants and bars and yoga studios and the gym? So we try to pick where the students are already going. But then on top of that, you got to make sure that all of that's affordable. So Salisbury University is roughly in the low 20s to go to school for the year. And that's for an in-state person. I think it's a little bit more for out-of-state, but it's an affordable university. And we're leery to look at universities that are, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, because those are, while they tend to have good endowments, those are the ones that we're not sure are going to be here for the long term. And we just try to stay conservative and pick schools that we think are going to be affordable to everybody, even in times that are tough. So that's kind of the high level way we look at selecting a property. And this one just checked our boxes, and we know the local market really well.
And so what would be the walk score for this particular property? Not just for, obviously speaking from a walk score from the yoga studios and the restaurants and the nightlife and things like that, but also the kind of the walk score, if you will, from the local university that you're kind of pulling these people from.
Sure. So that's actually something we looked at really closely, because we're actually going to be a little bit further away from the campus than just a quick 1-minute walk. So we're 1.4 miles away, but it's not arbitrary. We stuck it in the center of downtown. That is the primary growth of the city. The university has just put their first building in downtown, and they've stated that they're going to be putting their nursing programs building adjacent from the hospital, which is a block away from this building. So we're kind of looking long term. It's getting ahead of what's coming. That'll certainly be getting a phenomenal walking score to those areas. But we looked at our competition and saw what they were offering, and they're not close to the university either. They're maybe a mile, or in some cases a little bit further than that. And it really is one of those colleges where you're driving to campus and parking on campus and then going back to your off-campus dorm. So we were looking to position ourselves on the really good walking score to the nightlife, to the restaurants, to the yoga studios. So it was kind of a trade-off. Do we want to be super, super close, or do we want to provide them where they're actually going on the weekends and actually living? So I think we're going to be able to really offer that urban style housing that is not offered at Salisbury University to students who grew up out of Baltimore, DC, Northern Virginia, New Jersey, and in some cases, New York. So it's definitely a different type of property, but we've done a lot of research about these type of properties nationwide. We've seen some in different markets that perform really well, even though they're not right next to the campus. It's just giving the students that kind of live and work type of feel.
So what was the thought process behind making this all student housing and exclusive student housing versus maybe having it be just multifamily and renting it to students and then having it available for some of the other people that are working downtown?
So that's definitely a really important thing to look at. When you look at student housing, and it's become extremely apparent during COVID, we kind of knew beforehand that the bedroom bathroom parity is critical. So having every single student have their own bathroom is really important. But when you take that out and you put that kind of pricing on a multifamily property, your returns are definitely depressed a little bit. When you start to add those expenses into just a standard multifamily that can maybe get away with 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, or 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. In this case, it's a lot of 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom. So really purpose-built student housing, when you take a look at the numbers, tends to perform better, even though you're kind of setting you're setting a stated goal that you're going to need to achieve. While the property would perform, we would push if we had to just go to multifamily. It certainly wouldn't cater to students' needs as well. Some other things that are also important in student housing is kind of like study rooms and having a shuttle to and from the campus. And if you just add those expenses to a property that's geared towards multifamily, it really just doesn't perform as well. So all of the decisions were made to give us the best opportunity to be competitive, to serve the customer that we're aiming to serve, and do it in the best way possible, so that we're not sacrificing what really should be given to them. And some of the other things that kind of are important are fully furnished, all utilities included, so that it's the higher turnover type of property, so it's easier for them to just bring their stuff, move in, and leave. And that's all kind of important in the student housing world. That's a little bit different than our multifamily properties, where you're maybe not offering the fully furnished, all utilities included, shuttle to a certain location, or having a bed to bath parity.
So what's the delta between the competitive properties and this property once it's completed, as far as rents are concerned?
We felt it was important to be right in line with our competition. So we're actually projecting a little bit lower than one of our main competitors, and a little bit higher. We have two real main competitors that we feel we're competing against: the Gathering and the Orchards. We're a little bit lower than the Gathering, and we're a little bit higher than the Orchards. We actually think we'll outperform both of them, and we could maybe charge more. But we felt like doing the numbers conservatively, hitting exactly what's offered on the market, even though we're going to be the newest, shiniest thing on the market. If you know that you're going in with conservative numbers, then it's easier to be happy about a higher return than disappointed about then coming in a little bit lower. So when you really get in on a granular level, I think we're about $15 cheaper per room per month than the Gathering, and I think it's about $10 more per room than the Orchards.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts behind what's happening right now with COVID and student housing, because I'm connected with a few people that, have investments in student housing, and they're like less than 50% occupied during this school year because there's a lot of people doing virtual, and no student housing investor would have thought like something like this would happen and cause their occupancies to take a dip like they have. So what are your thoughts on kind of what's happening right now and kind of what might happen in the future? Because, what happens if we have another one, next year or the following, and, kind of what are some of the things that you do to mitigate that kind of downside risk?
Yeah. So a couple things, there's two things to talk about here. One is, what does the campus have? Is their income really dependent on housing as well? And I think that's really important to know, because at Salisbury University, about 40% of their income comes from on-campus room and board. That means they're taking a huge hit to their bottom line as well. So they're feeling it just like they would be if they were to close down campus. So we've seen Salisbury University bring students back to campus this year into a hybrid approach, where half the kids are all the kids are back at school, but half of the classes are virtual, half the classes are in person, like the science labs and classes that are hard to replicate on the internet. So that's one, is if a school is not really making a ton of their money from room and board, that might be a little bit more exposed to the administration saying, okay, let's go ahead and go virtual. Then the other side of it is making sure that your property manager is also really well positioned to be handling a situation like this. So we're working with American Campus Communities. They're the largest in the nation. They bring a lot of data. They have a national partnership with Lysol to have all of the hand sanitizing stations. They have an opening protocol and a sanitizing protocol that their staff is really well aware of. So there's a lot of back-end support to make sure that the property is being served well. And then that data that I was talking about, they take a look at, hey, which of these properties is performing? How are the rents doing? And what are the parents concerned about? A couple things that they had already started to incorporate in their properties is no carpet throughout anywhere. So there's no germs that students are feeling are being left from the previous tenants. They're having direct vented units. So each unit has their own HVAC that is directly vented to the outside. They have that one-to-one bed to bath parity. And they're just seeing that those type of properties are still doing well in this situation. And provided the school is still coming back, we're seeing those type of properties perform well. So yeah, it's been a rough year, but we don't think this is kind of a long-term hopefully this is not something that we're going to be doing year over year. Otherwise, we're going to be seeing many industries, events, baseball, football, all the way that we live our lives is going to be disrupted. So we think that this is, a property that'll do well and be well served at a school that is priced for downturns like this.
So let's take a step back for just a minute and go back to the acquisition of these 3 different properties that you've actually acquired. What kind of assets were on these properties before, or on these lots before? And, what was the process for like buying one and then going in to be able to buy the other 2 to be able to get it to the level where you can bulldoze them down and combine them so you can actually build something like this?
Yeah. So it was just, I had 1031 money from several other properties that we were selling off. I was selling off a lot of single family homes because the focus is to go to larger multifamily and student housing properties. And one by one, we started with the first one, and that was our main goal, was to acquire the site. And I guess let's take that back one step. We wanted to have the ability to renovate buildings that were in downtown. We had done that several times. There was a proven track record of doing that well, and we were making a lot of money doing that. The office spaces that were in those buildings were really in need of repair, and we felt like we could have a fallback if we couldn't get the zoning for these projects. But once we identified that we could get the walking bridge between the 2 buildings, we decided to go ahead and to buy the 2 different properties next to us, which gave us that economies of scale that would be able to build these larger buildings. So it was an organic process, and once we had the plans in place and we knew that we could work with the city, we decided to go ahead and buy those other buildings. We had to move 18 different businesses, though. They all moved into downtown, which was a good sign that everybody wanted to stay. And even the Chamber of Commerce is one of the buildings, so they even played ball with us, and they've been there for a long time. So
you basically bought each one of these individually, not thinking that you were going to combine them, and then eventually it just got to the point where you're like, this would be a great opportunity, since we have these 3 properties together, to really kind of put plans together to build something spectacular there.
Yeah, you're saying it a little bit better than I did, but yes, that's essentially what we did. Yeah.
Good. So how did you originally go about the financing of this?
Yeah, so we had the first building, the owner held paper on it, and that was just to give us some time to figure out what was going to happen. There was already existing renters in place, so there wasn't a lot of pressure to make a decision immediately. Once we kind of started formulating the plan, we decided to go ahead and acquire the two different buildings. We just used a private lender on the smaller building, then we just used a local lender to acquire the third one. Recently, we've refinanced all of the properties into one with our construction lender, First Trust Bank, and so we're ready to go for the construction of the overall building. So First Trust has been really understanding that it was not a good idea to just plow forward during COVID, and they decided to work with us and provided a bridge loan during the delay.
So what's been the where have you been getting, or what's the kind of the structure for like the equity portion of it? Because obviously the debt's one thing, but then there's another level of the capital stack, which would be on top of that, which would be the equity.
Yeah. So the loan to cost is about 70% loan to cost. The sponsors are bringing $2.4 million, and the remaining is being brought by just LP equity that we're in the process of syndicating right now. So we're looking to go in conservative. We didn't want to go too high leverage. We might go down to 68%, somewhere between 68 to 70% loan to cost, and the sponsors feel it's important to put a significant amount of money into the deal and leave it in there to show that we believe in the project, and we'll be signing on the debt and making sure that the guarantees are in place so that investors feel confident in our ability to get it done.
And so what's the timeline on this project?
Yeah, it'll be open in August of 2022. So 20 months to get it constructed, and starting in December, It gives us a little bit of, or November to December, that gives us a little bit of leeway just in case there's delays or, rain or any type of construction issues that come along.
You said August of 2022?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. And so it'll be pre-leased, I would presume, at that time for that first school year?
That's actually a really important part of working with the property manager so early on. Not only were they integral in providing really quality flooring options and just pointing out things that they've seen as best practices and in their buildings, but they also have a pre-leasing program that is really tried and true. And we've seen the other properties that were built in the area come online at 100% occupancy. That's definitely a goal of ours. We're not projecting that, but we would really like to have 100% occupancy year one. And that full extra year of leasing ahead of time is really critical. And American Campus has been very helpful in providing those plans so that we're out in front of the students nice and early.
I'm assuming this is a 506C. Is that what this one is?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we can talk about returns.
Yep.
Okay. So what are some of the projections that you're having on this one from a return perspective from the LP investor side of things?
Yeah, we're looking at it. So I think it's also important to know we're doing an opportunity zone project. So it's a 10-year hold so that you'll get the savings and capital gains. We're projecting about 14.5% return to the LPs. We're doing an 8% pref and a 70. I think we're doing pari passu actually through 15%. So we're pretty much right with our investors through the returns. I mean, we do get somewhat of an upside if we're performing around 18 or or higher, but we felt it was this particular deal. We were comfortable being kind of right there alongside of our investors along the way.
And what's the equity split? I think you might have mentioned it, but I didn't catch it.
So we're bringing about 19.5% of the equity. The remaining equity is from LPs, and then we have 70% debt on the property.
Okay. But what's the equity split from the investors? So they're getting that 8% preferred return. Yep. Is it 70-30 split, 80-20? What's the split on that one?
Yeah. So we're just going actually pari passu right up until I think we're projecting about 12.5%. Then we're going down to 70-30. Then we're going down to we do go down to 60-40 at 15% or higher. Okay. So, okay. But that's definitely a little bit tougher when you're doing those 10-year projections on an opportunity zone basis. Of course, IRRs are pushed down when you do longer deals. But that's why we decided to go a little bit further down on the waterfall than we typically would.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what about the projected returns for somebody who has the potential benefits of the opportunity zone piece of it? Yeah.
So opportunity zones typically are giving what we're seeing is about 3%. Definitely important to talk to your financial advisors to make sure that is truly the added benefit. So if we're giving a 14.5%, you can add 3% to that. It should be the net that you're seeing at the end of it from your tax savings. And then of course, depreciation benefits that standard investments give you on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Have you guys done a project like this before?
An opportunity zone project?
Well, either one, whether it be opportunity zone or something like this before. I know you had mentioned doing some other projects like downtowns and stuff like that, but anything to this scale?
Yeah. So we've done numerous projects in downtown. My company became one of the larger landlords in downtown, and I've actually ended up selling a lot of those properties off and doing a lot of 1031s into this project. This is one of the larger projects in downtown, but my partners that are in the deal, one of them owns the construction company that is constructing the building, and he's done numerous projects in the area that are significantly larger than what we have here. So his company, I think, has done over $750 million in our local market, done a lot of high-rise buildings in Ocean City, Maryland, and several of the other partners have done 86. I think it's actually exactly 86 units, just like this building. One of the other partners just finished up another new construction in Frederick, Maryland. So, very diversified team that's really well qualified to get this done.
Now, are there also going to be other types of tenants in this? Like, are there going to be like businesses in the bottom floor or anything like that? Or is it going to be just all it's going to be is just student housing?
So with COVID, one of the changes that we made was reducing the amount of retail we have in the property. So the ground level is actually students. Our leasing office. So we have about, I think it's about 10,000 square feet on the ground level that is ground level apartments. I think 4 of them are students, and 1 of them is the actual property manager's unit. And then we have the gym and the leasing office also on the ground level. But we did keep one 2,800 square foot rooftop cafe space that is for public retail space that the students can also get to. So it'll serve coffee and I think sandwiches and beer and just a nice space that being at the tallest building in the area, we felt it was critical to at least keep one space. But we didn't want to be in a position where we had to fill a large amount of ground level retail, even though it is in downtown and we feel like it would do well. Just with the COVID, you're seeing what's happening with retail. We just didn't feel like it was something that we could really say for certain it was going to be filled. And if it was going to be filled, how much were we going to have to give back in rent concessions or, build out? So we decided to go ahead and cut it and go with the majority of it as students.
And as a backup plan at the rooftop area, you could always use that as a space for renting out for different venues and events, things like that. If for some reason you couldn't find a tenant to be able to take that over and actually put a restaurant up there or something.
That's what we're thinking. Fortunately, I had several conversations, even in the middle of COVID, restaurant owners in the area that are really well positioned, good operators, and they were very interested. I mean, when they found out that it's such a unique space, it's something that's not able to be replicated very easily. They felt like it was a very competitive space, and we're in several conversations. We think that we'll be able to fill it with the right person who's going to put a significant investment of their own and make it a special space. But you're exactly right. There is a good backup plan there.
So what keeps you up at night on this property? So that's kind of the question that I'm curious about, because there's obviously things that could go wrong, right? There's things that could, delay this, and, you pre-leased it for the August 2020 to 2023 school year, and then it ends up not being done until December that year or something like that, and kind of causes some additional delays. But what are some things that you would say are some of your downside risks that you guys kind of have to constantly be monitoring and be aware of on this project?
So construction schedule is always a risk when you're doing something this large. And that is definitely one of the main things that keeps us up at night, is making sure that we have enough time. And you can, conceivably get this done in 16 months if you're really fast. But that's assuming very little rain delays. That's assuming very little supply chain delays, which COVID has definitely introduced some obstacles here. So fortunately, working with our operator, or one of the owners of the building is also the owner of the construction company, who's on the hook for a completion guarantee. That definitely mitigates a lot of that risk, but that is certainly something that I watch very closely in working with our superintendents to make sure that we're on schedule, and the pre-planning process of making sure that everything is here on time is really important. I'm watching an apartment building in our local market not open on time because they don't have appliances. They don't have windows here yet. And that's just not planning ahead, not seeing that COVID could have issues like this come along. And they're waiting for those items. And those are really coming in slowly right now because of the COVID supply chain issues. So that's definitely one of the major things in development. It's not anything particular to this property. It's any development I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
what would you say is, you had mentioned earlier about the occupancy being on one of the not sister properties, but a nearby competitor that was, they leased up 100% the first year they were open. And you mentioned that your projections were not based off 100% occupancy during your first opening year. What are your projections for that first year as far as occupancy, going to physical occupancy, but as well as economic occupancy?
Yeah, so we think realistically based on the feasibility study, we had two different studies done, one done by CBRE and one done by Danter and Associates. Just having that third party knowledge kind of look at the market, and then of course working with our property managers again, we realistically think about 95% is realistic to be projecting for that first year, and then somewhere in the 97 to plus percent for the years after, just based on the school's growth and the continuing operations of the building. We think that overall it was better to just go ahead and do projections based on 95% across the board for our projections. That way we have a little bit of wiggle room, but that's a decision that was not made just because of I decided to make it up. It was looking to the experts to provide that information for us.
So what's the all-in kind of, nugget that you have to bring to the table from the debt and the equity side of things for being able to get this thing to the point of being able to open the doors day one? What's that all-in construction cost?
34.5, land, construction, everything.
Fully furnished, everything.
Fully furnished, soup to nuts. Yep.
Okay. And then holding on to it for 10 years, 97+% occupancy. What's the projected exit price in 10 years?
Yeah, I was actually pretty conservative with exit caps and everything. I really like to not, again, I'd rather be surprised. I'm trying to be realistic. We think somewhere in the neighborhood of about 43.5 is the conservative growth. There's a lot of things that could boost that, and that's the addition of the nursing school in downtown that I had mentioned. That's kind of an unknown. They're talking about a lot of students right next to the building. We could see maybe having higher occupancy year over year. There's just a lot of different things that we're looking at that could really boost it. But we think the conservative way to look at this is just go with 43.5 and be happy 10 years from now when all those unknowns come through.
Sure. Hopefully. And what are some of the sensitivities that you guys do on these to kind of see what happens on the project based on maybe you don't hit 97%, maybe you're at say 93% or something like that. What are some of those sensitivities that you guys usually run on the modeling?
Yeah, we look at a lot of different sensitivity. What can we reduce the rent to? What to make sure that we're hitting our occupancy. You don't want to do that too much though, because obviously that sets you back over the growth. So we look at what occupancy do we need to push, but how much lower can we drop our rents to make sure that we're hitting certain occupancies. We look at the sensitivity of different like leasing compensations that we give to students. So some years we've seen cruises given away to get people in the door, but that's a whole month off. So we run a much larger advertising sensitivity, and that actually does affect returns when you do that over 300 rooms. And then, of course, we try to reduce a lot of that risk by bringing in bonuses to the staff for making sure that we have low turnover and just making sure that we're getting ahead of our leasing at certain dates during the year. Because the closer you get to the school year, the more you're giving away.
Yep. Yeah. So far in this entire process, what would you say up to this point has been something that was a lot easier than maybe you had originally thought was maybe going to be a little bit harder at this point?
Easier. I think our local administration is the city has been easier to work with than I would have ever thought. I mean, they're such big supporters of the project. They've really worked with us to make this possible. I mean, whenever we have an obstacle, we were having a little bit of issues with paying full freight for parking. So the city said, okay, let's introduce new parking rates for students in downtown. I mean, that's a huge savings to us over the project to make it feasible. And they're really there to help us attract the capital. So that was one. I think the harder side of this, I think we've definitely seen investors tentative of tertiary markets and schools that are a little bit smaller than 10,000 students or more. And that was definitely a little bit of a surprise. I knew that is definitely something that larger funds and groups are looking for. They're very rigid about certain types of returns, and I can understand, they have to hit certain metrics. I was a little surprised at how closed off some investors are to looking at markets that perform and do really well, but they just are very rigid about what they're looking for. So the education process behind that has been a little bit more of a lift than we thought, but nothing we can't get through.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. Well, it sounds like it's a great project. And I know there's probably some people on here that maybe have some further questions for you about this project or whatever. And love for you to be able to, take the opportunity now to kind of let the audience know kind of how can they reach out to you if they have further questions for you on this particular project, or maybe on some of these future projects that you might be getting your hands in as well in the future.
Sure. You can take a look at my website at simpsonbuilding.com, or you can take a look at the project's website at theross@salisbury.com. And my email is nick@simpsonbuilding.com. I'm easy to get a hold of and look forward to talking with anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you taking some time today to be with us and sharing some information here about this unique project that you have going on called The Ross, and looking forward to continuing to follow you. And, what I'd like to do is once this thing goes full force and say maybe August of 2022, we'll circle back and, kind of get a recap of how things went over the next 20 months and, kind of how things are shaping up.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that we didn't touch our contingency budget at all, and I'm returning excess $1 million to investors. And it went super smooth. We're 100% occupied. So hopefully we're past COVID. That would be nice. Let's set the bar a little bit lower. But that would be nice. I look forward to it.
Yep, good. Well, it's nice having you on. Look forward to having on a future episode.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.